Thank you for being patient, and good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us today. Hopefully the new link works and you can see this from your phones or your laptops. Welcome to this report launch live on LinkedIn, discussing the profound implications of advanced machine learning in surveillance. My name is Tommy Walker. I'm a British journalist in Bangkok, Thailand, and I cover news within Southeast Asia, which includes digital and human rights. I'll be your host today for today's insightful discussion, and this event is hosted by Manushya Foundation. Now, this report is to mark Human Rights Day, which is on December 10th, and is to explore the pivotal themes from Manushya's recent report, Balancing Progress and Human Rights. Is Thailand ready for artificial intelligence that respects human rights? This report talks about how AI, machine learning, has transformed surveillance into a tool of unprecedented precision and scale. It also provides a comprehensive look at the data-driven capabilities that now define our monitoring systems, revealing both the technological marvels and the pressing ethical questions that arise from them. Today, the author of the report, JeanJean Dinco, will present the findings and recommendations, and three experts will also react to the report, who I will introduce as we go. They will tell us what they think of the report, how it made them feel, and we'll try to answer some of the following questions. Is this report comprehensive? Did it address the main question it was trying to answer? Did it present clear recommendations? Did it give the audience something to take home? Did it give sufficient evidence to back its claim? Once our speakers have informed us of their findings and thoughts, we'll go to a Q&A from you, from the audience. So, just introducing our first speaker. It's a pleasure to introduce, our main speaker, Dr. JeanJean Dinco. Jean is the author of the report we're discussing and an expert in the intersection of technology and human rights. She serves as Manushya's digital rights advisor. She is also a human rights activist working in the field of data science and cybersecurity. Jean got her PhD at the University of New South Wales in Canberra, Australia, focusing on the analysis of government propaganda and mis- and disinformation in the context of the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar. Jean, thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to your insights. Take it away when you're ready.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jane. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I am here today on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I would also like to recognize the ongoing struggles of all Indigenous peoples around the world who are bravely fighting for their rights and justice. These communities are disproportionately affected by land grabs, exploitation by capitalist system, and devastating impact of corporations that plunder their resources, often sanctioned by government. And as we sit here today in comfort, I'd like you to remember that there is an ongoing genocide against Palestinian people brought upon by imperialist forces. So let us be mindful of these ongoing struggles and reflect on how we can contribute to making a world that upholds human dignity and justice for all. So if you're here, I would assume that you know what machine learning is, or what what we erroneously call as AI. There is so much hype about it. We have seen how governments around the world are really pushing to have AI in their workflows, and the makers of this technology has taken advantage of this hype by luring governments to jump into the bandwagon. And the idea that you have a tool such as facial recognition, large language models, predictive policing, and the ability to surveil social media is a win-win. This is why we at Manushya Foundation decided to work together to assess how ready Thailand is when it comes to AI technologies that respect human rights. So that's basically the core question of the report. Every argument, every point made is an argument for human rights. So the drive towards AI in Thailand can be seen as an extension of a capitalist imperative where technological advancements are not really for the benefit of, let's say the homeless man living in the streets of Sukhumvit, or a Muslim woman working as a grade school teacher living in Patani. These tools are there mainly for economic growth and increased surveillance. So this raises critical questions about who benefits from the adoptions of these technologies. Is it the working masses, or is it the multinational corporations alongside the surveillance apparatuses of the government? So in Thailand, the adoption of AI technologies have proven to become more contentious. It symbolizes an open door, a door that opens for the creation of a surveillance state. So it extends the long-standing governance practices where monitoring is method of state control. So by turning personal data into commodity and masking broad surveillance under the banner of national security, AI technologies have shown us what it can do to strengthen the marriage between the state and the capital, quashing dissent, cementing power even more firmly. So what really sets this kind of surveillance apart isn't just the goals, but how deep and efficient AI technologies makes monitoring. So these systems can watch and process information in a huge scale, and they're rolling out faster than we can update our laws to protect ourselves. So if you've been following the news, the Thai government installed some of these tools like facial recognition and predictive policing, targeting communities like Malay Muslims in the Deep South. And a big step up in this surveillance effort was when they were required to give facial scans to their mobile service providers. And in 2002, at the peak of the pandemic, high-tech surveillance cameras were set up supposedly to improve security. Of course, always under the guise of national security. But really what it has done is it's just turned the technology into another tool for the government to tighten its grip. They collect tons of data, often without genuine consent, which ends up feeding systems that unfairly target marginalized groups, moving from just overreach to actual suppression under the guise of progress. These recommendations have quite a few recommendations, and I will not go into them into details now, but here's what we think need to happen specifically. So we call for a tech-agnostic law that is human-centered and would prioritize the rights of a well-being of the community. So this means that while we are regulating AI technologies, we hope that the law will stand the test of time by creating new freedoms, like freedom from surveillance. So the goal here is to create a legal framework that not only addresses the current challenges of technology, but will also pave the way for safeguarding our freedoms in the rapidly evolving digital world. We called on to the government, to revise laws such as the Computer Crime Act, the Personal Data Protection Act, that have heaps of loopholes, that allow too much government reach or misuse of data under the guise of national security. And there is a necessity to make sure that any intervention is in privacy of the citizens are absolutely necessary and justified. So it's not just an excuse to keep tabs on everyone. And for the civil society, there is a crucial need to wake up and ensure that governments and businesses are not exploiting technology at the expense of the people. So Monahan in 2023, on his paper on ethical surveillance, presents a compelling argument. He said, the only ethical surveillance is no surveillance. And I tend to agree on that. It is true that the continuous privation of AI-driven surveillance in the everyday is becoming the norm, but it does not mean that humans will just accept it. Ursula K. Le Guin, in her acceptance speech in 2014, said that any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. And I believe that the fight against AI-driven surveillance is a fight for the soul of humanity. I believe that it's a struggle to reclaim the capacity, the ability to envision a world beyond exploitation, beyond alienation. Because as long as AI surveillance exists, freedom of thought will remain under siege.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jean. Okay, now I'd like to turn to Emilie Palamy Pradichit, who is our legal expert on Thai laws. Emilie is an intersectional feminist, an international human rights lawyer, and the founder of Manushya Foundation, powering women, youth, and the marginalized communities across Asia, focusing on democracy, access to justice, digital rights, and climate justice. Now, Emilie, based on the report's findings, could you discuss the potential legal loopholes in Thailand that might affect the implementation of such advanced surveillance technologies? What should Thai policymakers focus on to safeguard privacy while embracing, these AI tools?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tommy. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Jean, the author of the report, for sharing with everybody the findings and key recommendations of the report. So obviously, since the report is commissioned by Manushya Foundation and we're hosting this event, if you're asking me the question of is Thailand ready for AI that respects human rights, my answer will be no, right? But let's see what the other reactors will say. But my answer is clearly no, because on the one hand, you have AI holds great promises for Thailand. Thailand has ambitiously embracing it through the National AI Strategy and Action Plan from 2022 to 2017, and it's positioning the country as a leader in the region's digital transformation. But on the other hand, on the other side of the story, you have a darker reality that Jean clearly explains, where AI is increasingly deployed as a tool to unchecked surveillance and political control, all while prioritizing profit and economic growth over the rights and well-being of its own people. So it's really important for me to share with you that I will explore the critical legal loopholes in Thailand's AI governance and propose actionable reforms to ensure that technological progress does not come at the expense of human rights. So first, in terms of legal loopholes, I really want to focus on the Personal Data and Protection Act, so what we call the PDPA. So Thailand PDPA, it's modeled on global frameworks following, the EU GDPR, but the PDPA falls alarmingly short when applied to AI and emerging technologies. So one critical issue lies in Section 4 of the PDPA because it grants sweeping powers to the states. They are exempt, they are allowed to bypass consent requirements under the pretext of national security. So anything that relates to national security, the government can use it, to collect data. And this loophole really has been exploited to justify invasive surveillance practices already in Thailand, such as the use of Pegasus spyware on activists and human rights defenders. And it has also been accepted by the government in parliament that they did that. So this surveillance not only violates privacy, but also creates a chilling effect, deterring people from exercising their rights to free expression and assembly. The PDPA also lacks clarity on how it applies to automated data collection. So the PDPA doesn't talk at all about AI. So it's really leaving individuals unprotected from AI systems that would collect and analyze the personal data without any transparency and accountability. The second loophole is the broader ethical and legal gaps in AI governance. The shortcomings in the PDPA are really part of a broader failure in AI governance framework. So the first gap is really the systemic bias and discrimination. And I think Jean already talked about it, when she shared how AI tools like facial recognition have been disproportionately targeting marginalized communities, such like the Malayu Muslim in the Deep South. How surveillance cameras equipped with AI have been deployed to track movements and collect biometric data, including DNA samples, also in the Deep South. The second gap is really the lack of transparency and accountability. So we have the Cybersecurity Act of 2019 in Thailand that actually empowers the government to define cyber threats so broadly that even peaceful online dissent can be classified as a threat. So the Anti-Fake News Center also uses AI to monitor and suppress critical voices online, undermining freedom of expression, while operating without meaningful oversight. And the third point that I want to talk is the risks posed by those legal and ethical gaps. So the first risk is really the privacy breaches. AI systems like facial recognition and biometric tracking are being weaponized for mass surveillance, particularly against activists and minorities. And we have experienced it already in Thailand. The second risk is the state overreach. So weak legal safeguards enable the government to misuse AI tools under vague national security justification, really fostering an environment of fear and control. And the third risk is really ethics washing. So because Thailand has ethical AI guidelines that are not binding, and non-binding guidelines like the national AI ethics guidelines allow corporations and state actors to claim ethical compliance without addressing the real harms caused by the AI deployments. So Thailand has no specific AI laws, that would regulate the misuse of AI or that would force corporate actors or even the government to ensure that AI respects human rights. So that's very problematic for us. And with currently sitting at the UN Human Rights Council, more than ever, Thailand needs to uphold human rights. AI should not be an unchecked force in Thailand. It must be developed with human rights standards at its core. Our report makes it clear that Thailand's existing legal framework lacks the depth needed to protect individuals from potential AI-related harms. We need a dedicated AI law that mandates transparency, accountability, and human rights protection so that technology truly serves the public good and protects people. Thank you, Tommy.
Okay, thanks, Emily. That was great. Okay, so building on that, let's see Joanita's reaction. Joanita Britto Menon is the legal program manager Asia at Trustlaw, Thomson Reuters Foundation, where she leads the pro bono service delivery and drives social impact across Asia and the Pacific. Since joining in 2021, she has worked to expand pro bono networks and foster collaborations that address critical social and legal challenges. Now, based in Mumbai, India, Joanita is passionate about leveraging legal expertise to create sustainable change in the region. Joanita, as someone who supports legal service delivery across the globe, what international standards should be considered to enhance local legislation in relation to AI? Which principles of jurisprudence could be adapted within the Thai legal framework to address these loopholes? When you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Tommy. I hope you can hear me. And hello, everyone. Thank you especially to the Manushya team for having me here today. I would firstly like to congratulate Emilie and Jean on their persistence to bring this report to fruition. And the reason I say this is it all began when Emilie approached the Trustlaw team for pro bono comparative legal analysis of the Thai AI ethics guideline against global and regional AI standards alongside the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. And once she had the legal research that she requested, she brought on board Jean, who has written this report based on her analysis of the legal research and her experience in the field as an expert on AI and machine learning. And in this process, it has just been the sheer persistence of both Emilie and Jean that brings us here today. So I needed to flag that out and congratulate both of you for your efforts and for making this possible. Now, Tommy, thanks for the question. And before I delve into the comparison with global legal frameworks, I would just like to add a few, reactions or, notes from the summary of what stood out to me in this report. Now, the report is a very comprehensive one, especially the aspect of identifying the areas that need to be worked upon within the Thai legal framework. As per the report, we are given to understand that there are a couple of areas for improvement, which include, of course, the inclusion of human rights considerations in existing legal frameworks, whether it is through the PDPA, the Cybersecurity Act, the Computer Crime Act. These are a few of the regulations currently enacted in Thailand, which do not adequately address potential human rights violations related to AI technologies. The other aspect is developing privacy and data protection. Now, the PDPA lacks specific provisions for AI use cases, particularly concerning the automated data processing and explicit consent, leaving room for interpretation that could lead to privacy breaches. There is also a lack of binding regulations in the aspect that the AI ethics guideline is not binding. And this allows for a lot of space again for interpretation and the potential for corporations and government agencies to potentially use it for ethics washing, as Emilie said, without a legal imperative to comply. Of course, there are other, stark issues such as issues related to surveillance and data collection, which Emilie also highlighted as she spoke earlier. Then the need to prevent bias and discrimination. There's also a very high chance for oversight and a lack of accountability in the current framework. There is a definite need for public participation and transparency. There is also a noting of the fact that there is more economic focus over human rights in the fact that the national AI strategy prioritizes economic growth, often sidelining the human rights and data privacy concerns. And then, of course, with the way the world is evolving globally, there is also a need to have gender and diversity considerations, as well as also providing for legal remedies and compensation. So this is what the report primarily highlights about the Thai law. And in identifying these gaps, the report surmises that there is still a lot of work to be done in Thailand for responsible AI adoption, as the current legal framework needs to adopt a more holistic approach to protecting human rights in the context of AI technologies. And that sometimes is good news for policymakers and CSOs like Manushya, which are looking to advocate for improvement. So I think that's the positive aspect of the fact that there is space to create room for dialogue like this, and take recommendations forward. Now, as you asked, how does this kind of translate to legal jurisprudence, and what does this look like in comparison to the rest of the world, right? I would like to begin here by saying I know the report definitely highlights a number of gaps, and those are evident. But it's also a situation that kind of comes up with the fact that the legal frameworks across the globe are also grappling with the constantly evolving nature of AI. And so while there are efforts to regulate the development and deployment of artificial intelligence systems, for most part, these actions have till date predominantly been very national or regional focused. But in the last year or so, we are seeing that there is more interest and there is more inclination coming in terms of the multiple international frameworks that have been attempted to be put in place to infuse the importance of the human rights approach to regulating AI. Now, some of these key international frameworks are, of course, the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, UNESCO's recommendation on the ethics of AI, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's the OECD AI Principles, then of course EU's Artificial Intelligence Act, which is an act that entered into force on the 1st of August 2024 and will be fully applicable in 2 years with some exceptions, and the more recent Council of Europe Framework Convention on Artificial Intelligence and Human Rights, Democracy and the Rule of Law. I know that's quite the mouthful there, but that was opened for signature during a conference of the Council of Europe Ministers of Justice in September this year. It is the first ever international legally binding treaty aimed at ensuring that the use of AI systems is fully consistent with human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Now, this, however, is still subject to being ratified and is just again a step towards establishing AI governance that is centered in human rights. However, this does kind of answer part of the question that you brought up, Tommy, in terms of like what are the principles that need to be kept in mind in terms of AI regulation, AI governance, and the objectives of all of these frameworks in general are fourfold, right? One is to ensure responsible AI development. 2, to protect fundamental human rights. 3, to promote transparency and accountability, and then 4, to establish global standards for AI governance. Now, I may not be able to delve into each of these in detail, but I would like to give you a highlight of some of the countries that have taken a lead in the AI governance approach. And I'd like to start with Asia, because I know most of us here on the call, or actually all of us here on the call, are based out of Asia. So while much of Asia takes a light touch and voluntary approach to the AI regulation, some jurisdictions, and I know this is a controversial one, so I say it with caution, some jurisdictions like China have taken a more prescriptive approach. Now, it is worth noting that most Asian governments have displayed a clear intention to support the development of AI industry and tools. However, some countries, including Vietnam and South Korea also, appear to be moving towards the adoption of a more prescriptive regulatory approach towards AI. So it is likely that more countries will look to implement AI regulatory laws once the effect of the EU AI Act are felt and assessed. Just going a little bit towards China. So China is definitely a forerunner in the regulation of AI in Asia. While there is currently no general or overarching AI law in China, the regulators, that is the Cybersecurity Administration of China more specifically, has in recent years introduced mandatory technology-specific regulations and measures to address the risks associated with different aspects of AI. So unlike the frameworks that currently are in Singapore, these regulations and measures have legal effect. We'll take a quick look also at South Korea, which has a national AI ethics standards. It also has an AI regulatory sandbox, which is quite a unique approach to AI regulation, where the Personal Information Protection Commission, that's the PIPC of South Korea, which is the primary enforcement authority for privacy matters, has initiated a policy that provides for a regulatory sandbox for AI and pre-adequacy assessment systems. What do we mean by this? South Korea has basically taken an innovation-friendly approach on the principle of adopting technology first and regulating later. And this aims to support the development and industrial activation of AI technologies. Again, South Korea does take a human-centric AI development approach with the checks and balances it has in place. However, as I said, right, it's still yet to have its own specific guidance. I now move towards the European continent and actually look at UK, and again this will be an interesting comparison in terms of what are principles that we need to look at adopting or focusing on, and kind of also touches to the roadmap that's been developed in the report by Dr. Jean. So the UK government published an AI white paper on the 29th of March 2003, which listed 5 value-focused cross-sectoral principles for regulators to interpret and apply within their respective domains. And these are intended to promote the ethical use of AI. And you'll find some common terms here. There's safety, security, and robustness, appropriate transparency and explainability, fairness, accountability and governance, contestability and redress. Now, the new government in the UK is currently preparing its AI bill, which will target the most advanced AI models such as ChatGPT. It aims to make existing voluntary commitments between companies and governments, such as those agreed at the UK's Safety Summit, legally binding, and to turn the UK's AI Safety Institute into an arm's length government body. And a consultation for this was scheduled in November this year. And we are expecting that the bill should be introduced by the end of 2024, early 2025. Now, in the US, a very unique approach, mainly because of the federal system of the US. In October 2022, the White House published a federal guidance, which was a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, identifying 5 principles aiming to guide the design, use, and deployment of automated systems. Now, this was designed to operate as a roadmap to protect public from AI harms and was followed in October 2023 by the US President's executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence. Now, complementing the US government initiatives, federal agencies such as the National Institute of Standards and Technology and Homeland Security have been tasked with issuing standards and guidance and existing regulatory authorities to monitor and control the use of AI in ways that will impact AI providers and users. So, a very interesting specification there. And what is the approach they take? They take a sectoral approach to AI regulation. There are state level initiatives. An example is the California Consumer Privacy Act, federal guidelines on AI ethics, and a focus on innovation while protecting rights. Now, there is, however, an expressed concern by a number of observers, academicians, which say that the lack of policy at a federal level versus the 100 of AI bills that are being brought about at the state level is actually providing quite a patchwork effect for the US, and that is something they will have to kind of figure out. But in addition to these countries and locations that I've spoken to, and I know I'm running out of time, so I'll wrap this up here. Countries to watch are Germany, Finland, Canada, Estonia. Each of them have brought in some form of regulatory framework that is very human-centric, society-focused, and is worth delving into. However, as you would have understood, I think by now, the primary steer for AI governance is to ensure transparency, responsible AI development, and accountability. And I think these are kind of reflected in each of the principles that we look at in the countries that have, or the EU also, that are looking at, developing some kind of AI guidance. And reports such as the one launched by Manushya thus become very essential in highlighting the human rights elements which often get overlooked in the race to development. So with that, Tommy, I hand it back to you, and I'm happy to take questions later.
Okay, Joanita, that was brilliant. Thanks for giving us more understanding and, expanding our knowledge on the international norms of, how AI is being used and how it can improve local laws. Okay, so moving on to another crucial aspect of this topic, let's discuss the role of civil society, in shaping AI policy. I'll come to you, Arzak. Just for everyone watching, Arzak Khan is the founder of I4C Center for Artificial Intelligence and Human Rights, focusing on the risks and human right implications of AI systems. Now, Arzak is a digital policy expert. He addresses issues such as bias, surveillance, and mass manipulation while advocating for marginalized voices from the global south in cyber policy debates. Arzak is passionate about shaping inclusive and accountable AI governance globally. So, going on from Joanita speaking there, Arzak, could you elaborate on how civil society can engage more effectively in advocating for transparent and accountable AI surveillance practices? What steps should be taken to ensure that these technologies are developed and used ethically?
Thank you, Tommy. First of all, I would like to congratulate the team Manushya and the author Jean for launching this very important report. And it's an honor and privilege to be invited to speak, especially on the role of civil society in advocating for transparent, accountable, and ethical AI practices. At the heart of our discussion with our loved colleagues, I think it lies a very profound question. How do we ensure that technology is designed and claimed to enhance governance and security do not erode the basic freedoms and dignity that define our humanity? Who benefits from AI surveillance? Who is armed? And who decides its ethical limits? For those of us in the global south, this challenge is even more pressing as AI surveillance technologies are often being introduced in context shaped by historical inequalities and colonialism, economic vulnerabilities, and the fragile governance systems we have. For instance, the government's use of facial recognition technology during protest has led to targeting and arrest of activists and journalists and even opposition members, not just only in Thailand, India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, but we have seen it's being rapidly used in most of countries in global south. Secondly, the deployment of massive AI surveillance networks that use facial recognition system, which you might have seen when landing at various airports, biometric data being collected, and mobile tracking to monitor vast populations. And it does not end there. If you look at the refugees, they are being surveilled at a level never experienced before. In countries like Kenya and Rwanda, there are increasing efforts through support of Chinese private sector companies to implement AI surveillance tools and systems for so called smart cities or urban monitoring, curbing crime, and improving public health management. While these technologies may to some extent improve services, but there are concerns about the lack of transparency and accountability in their deployment. These realities compel any human being with a conscience to take a proactive role in shaping the ethical and practical use of AI systems. And when it comes to AI transparency and accountability, I don't think they are merely technical or legal requirements. I think they are moral essentials that uphold human dignity and its independence. In many countries, we see AI surveillance systems are being deployed without public knowledge or consent, and this has been going on for the past decades, raising serious concerns on the ethical and practical concerns, especially with the rapid development in technology. We are seeing that the opaque nature of these systems are allowing them to continue new harms from biased policing to unauthorized data collection and its usage. So civil society must act as an ethical guardian in this sense, demanding transparency, especially on how these systems operate, what data they collect, and how that data is being used. This is particularly very important in context where surveillance is often used as a tool for consolidating power rather than promoting public good. And there are numerous examples from our region on how surveillance is being used for consolidating power. Accountability mechanism, I think it's very important to have independent civil society audits. There needs to be oversight committees and public reporting to ensure that governments, corporations, and developers are held responsible for any harm caused by these systems. Uh, Ethical AI must reflect the realities and values of the communities it serves. So, metaphysically, we must embrace an ethics of diversity, recognizing that Western concepts of privacy, freedom, and fairness may not fully capture the cultural and social complexities of the Asian region. For instance, the communal nature of many societies in the South may demand a different approach to data ownership and consent. And civil societies locally, globally, and internationally must advocate for AI systems. They are grounded in local realities, understanding the local systems, ensuring that they are designed to serve the needs of the vulnerable and marginalized, rather than reinforcing existing inequalities, which is currently it's up to doing. This involves pushing for fairness audits to eliminate bias and promoting technologies that prioritize inclusivity and equity. Lastly, I also think that AI technologies is a global issue and it transcends borders, and the challenges they pose require global solidarity. So, civil society should advocate for international agreements and standards that can guide AI use worldwide, promoting cooperation and shared principles for ethical AI development in both global north, and global south. The heart of this vision that AI surveillance must not merely be a tool for national security, efficiency. I think it must be a force for justice, dignity, and human flourishing in the digital age. And civil society has this responsibility to ensure that these technologies are developed and deployed with care, with empathy, and with a commitment to the values that bind us as human beings, not as just data. As we navigate this technological frontier, I think it's important to remember that our ultimate goal should not be to regulate machines, but to protect and elevate the human spirit through transparency, accountability, and ethical vigilance. So we can ensure that AI serves the collective good and not just the interest of the powerful corporations and governments in the North. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Arzak, for that. That was really interesting to hear your thoughts there. It's important to highlight the roles, of what civil society play, in AI. Okay, so all of our speakers have shared their thoughts today and their insights. Just to summarize today's discussion, we've already looked at the scope of the report and how it looks at AI, human rights, and the legal framework in Thailand. Our speakers have discussed the need for robust.
Tommy, I think you're on mute.
Oh,
Yeah.
am I back? I think it's tech problems. Can you hear me now? I think it's tech problems. Yeah, just to recap. Yeah, so we've discussed.
Sorry, Tommy.
Yeah,
I don't think we can hear you still.
really?
Seems we lost our moderator. We lost our host.
Oh,
Tommy join again. Yes.
okay, great. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think there was some technical issues. It wasn't my microphone. Yeah, Arzak, thanks for going through that, discussing civil societies. Yeah, just for everyone watching, our speakers, we've looked at the report and how it looks at AI and, human rights and the legal framework in Thailand. Our speakers have discussed the need for robust legal reforms needed to safeguard against AI violations. And also the legal and ethical gaps in Thailand, in Thailand's AI legal structure and what risks they pose. We've also looked at how other countries have integrated human rights policies into their AI framework, which I found very interesting, and also the importance of civil societies to be involved in ethical AI usage, as Arzak said. Everyone who's watching us on LinkedIn from wherever you are in the world, thanks for sticking with us at this point. Just before we go to a Q&A from the audience, I've got a couple of questions I'd like to put to all of the speakers. So whoever wants to answer, please go ahead. The report is essentially, it's a roadmap, for responsible, ethical, and human-centered approach in AI that respects human rights. Can you tell us more about that roadmap? Can it be applied to all countries globally? Is that feasible, or and is it feasible enough to ensure that they develop responsible AI policies? And secondly, can you tell me and the audience, what would a good AI legislation look like? So for anyone who wants to answer, please go ahead. Jean, Emilie, Joanita, Arzak, they're my questions. Anyone want to go?
Oh, okay. I can. I saw Emily unmute, but okay.
Yeah,
Should I go?
sure.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So thanks for that, and I'll look at the first question that you brought up, Tommy, which is on whether the roadmap brought out through the report is something that can be implemented in other countries, or can be used for inspiration. So one of the interesting methods that has been used to actually assess each of the laws that are described in the report, or that have been kind of analyzed in this report, is a human rights focused policy impact assessment. Now, this is a very interesting thing, an interesting tool. I can't call it a tool, but it's an interesting method to assess the human rights focused aspect of a policy. And if you look at it, and it's on page 23 of the report, when the report does get shared and disseminated, it looks at five primary areas, which are policy and governance, development and operations, access, oversight, and human rights norms. Now, in these three areas, what the impact assessment does is it breaks down each of these into three subgroups. So, like for policy and governance, there is an impact assessment, there is a regulatory check, and there is a transparency related question. And these are very clear cut questions under each of these topics, which can be answered in yes or no. And that's an interesting way to actually analyze any kind of policy or law, to identify whether it is meeting some of the fundamental principles of ethics and human rights. And I feel, in terms of whether this can be implemented or used in other countries, my observation as a lawyer is that it is possible to use majority of it. Some of the aspects may seem complicated to get the information for, but if it is to do a regulatory check, or to identify whether there is a transparency mechanism, if there has been inclusive design, if there are bias checks, if there are privacy protocols, whether there is equitable access, whether there is stakeholder inclusion, whether there is there have been awareness drives, whether there are feedback mechanisms or grievance paths without reprisals, or audits, or harm prevention, or user autonomy, or user privacy. These are all things that, if you even compare to some of the fundamentals of like the EU acts, or for even the principles that the UK has brought about, or even what Japan has kind of kept as its 5 principles, these relate to all of those. So in that sense, it is something that is that can be universally applied in general, and would help in understanding the assessment of a policy, or the impact assessment of a policy. So I would definitely second this as a good method. And kudos to Jean and the Manushya team for identifying this in such a succinct way. It's definitely worth exploring.
Okay, does anyone else want to maybe share their input?
Yeah, Tommy, if I
Jean?
may, I think uh,
Arzak?
the report is a roadmap for responsible AI, since AI is a global vision that can be adapted to fit local context. I think it's something that can be innovated and implemented in other regions as well. Coming to your second question, we recently did a co-design exercise with members of the civil society for coming up with good AI legislation that have currently no legislation. So to share it shortly, it's a 7-step principle. I think the first step is human rights protections, ensuring that there is safeguard, privacy, equality, and freedom of expression. The second step is transparency. I think AI systems are understandable, and their decision making processes are explainable to non technical people as well. Third one is accountability. I think clear responsibilities for the developers, users, and importantly, the regulators. The fourth principle is about fairness, which is to prevent discrimination and bias in AI systems. And we currently see that most of the AI systems that has been deployed globally comes with a lot of discrimination and bias in it. The fifth principle is security, to ensure that AI systems are safe and misuse from any cyber threats are protected, given that they are being deployed in critical infrastructure, so their security is of the most importance. And then the sixth principle is around inclusivity, involves diverse stakeholders in the decision making processes. At the moment, it's not happening in any legislation or implementation. So I think it's really important to have inclusivity, especially from the global south perspective and especially from the marginalized communities. And last principle is around regulation and oversight, which is to establish independent bodies to monitor compliances and to address any abuses the system might develop over the period of time. So yeah, over to you.
Arzak, thanks for that. Does anyone else want to add anything before I go to a question from the audience?
I'll just explain the method that we used. Thank you, Joanita, for that very kind words. So when we devised the human rights focused policy impact assessment, it came from a conversation with Emilie I told her that the current traditional policy evaluation models are often co-opted to legitimize the interests of corporations and state actors. So I told her that we need to depart from that idea that policy evaluation models are just there for economic development. Because most of the time, policy evaluation models the end goal is either profit or more state overreach. And what we did is with the HRPIA is we placed human rights as the center, and that's not incidental shift. It is a very deliberate. Move that to foreground the experiences of those who bear the brunt of exploitation and dispossession in the name of progress. So it interrogates the ways in which policies reinforce and exacerbate existing hierarchies from gender, from race, ethnicity to class, and it critiques the structural violence embedded in the deployment of technology. So this is not just it's not just a tool for an AI system. The methodology examines policies through multiple dimensions, starting with the legal and regulatory framework. And if you look at how we to examine or analyze the PDPA and the Cybersecurity Act, we looked at it as a tool that offered the veneer of regulation, because there are so much regulations and a lot of legal jargons in there, but at the end of the day, it fails to safeguard the rights of those most vulnerable to abuse. So laws like this, their vagueness, their lack of enforcement mechanism, either perpetuate a system where corporate and state surveillance strive at the expense of individual privacy and autonomy. And on a social and cultural level, the methodology that we use exposes how policies and technologies serve to reproduce and intensify structural inequalities in a capitalist society. So marginalized communities such as indigenous peoples and the working class are systematically excluded from all decision-making processes, while the benefits of technologies are concentrated in the hands of the wealthy elite. So the exclusion is not accidental. That is the point of the HRPIA, to actually look and dig deeper. That it's not a bug of the system. It is a feature of a capitalist economy where the interests of the few dictate the suffering of the many. And yeah, so in essence, I think that Juanita is right. It's not just a methodology, and for us, I think it's more recognizing that the true progress should not be measured by economic growth. No matter how many times we hear tech bros say that the regulation is the key to innovation. That's a big lie, and we know that the regulation leads to trickle down economics, and the only thing trickling down and trickle down economics is your sweat for overworking. By placing human rights at the center of AI policy, the HRPIA that we use offers offers a powerful critique, if I could use that term, of the status quo, and a vision for a world where technology serves humanity
Jean, thanks for that. Sorry, I was just trying to intervene there because I don't think everyone could hear you. So we'll come back to you in a second.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions from the audience. Thanks for watching and getting in touch. We have Elliot Underhill, who says, excellent panel. His question is, how do you think global civil society actors can most effectively advocate for these issues, especially given where most of the dominant AI firms are located? Do you think the focus should be on lobbying governments like the US or the EU, or more focused on lobbying the firms themselves? So anyone want to answer that? That would be fantastic. If you want me to repeat the question, I can.
Can I go for it?
Sure, please do.
It's an excellent question, and something that we have been debating a lot in our work as well. I think global civil society organizations should adopt a dual approach for advocating responsible AI. I think while lobbying with governments like in the US and UE is crucial for enacting regulations, AI firms hold a real significant influence, and they hold a significant influence over their governments as well, especially through economic power and lobbying. So, therefore, civil society must uh, also directly pressure corporations into adopting ethical AI practices. This includes, again, pushing for transparency, fairness, and accountability in the AI systems. And by targeting both government and firms, civil society can help ensure that AI development is responsible, equitable, and respects human rights.
Okay, Isaac, thanks for that. You can. I think your camera was off for that for me anyway. But great. Okay, thanks for replying there. We have another question as well. From Madhura Dasgupta, who said, "Thank you for holding this discussion. Looking forward to reading the report." Her question is, could you elaborate on how civil society participation looks like? Especially people who are trying to gauge AI and its possibilities. Anyone? Arzak, do you want to answer that? Or is anyone
Yeah.
else?
Yeah, I can answer that. So thank you very much, Madhura, for your question. So I would say in terms of civil society participation and the engagement of civil society on the topic of AI and human rights, it hasn't been that much. Honestly, especially coming from the Global South, it has often been a discussion led by Global North organization. And so just for example, to do this report launch, we're very grateful to have Arzak with us and to have Juanita with us, and also for Jean to be, our expert on this. It's very important for us to have experts from the Global South, because it's also linked to the previous question, because it's the people who are the most harmed by AI are the people living in the Global South. The firms developing AI tools are based in the Global North, right? And so you can feel that there's like a colonization of the digital space, because all the firms are coming from the Global North, but they are not caring how the technologies are being applied in the Global South, noting that most of the Global South countries, especially in ASEAN, where we have very authoritarian governments, we know that the regulatory framework is not going to protect human rights. So deploying AI from global firms into our context is very challenging. So we really need civil society from the Global South, to come together to power ourselves and to hold those discussions on AI and human rights. We need, of course, support from Global North organization. We need a global movement, but most importantly, if we want AI to respect human rights, we need to get the knowledge ourselves. We need to be able to come together. We need to be able to share the information. And we really need to be able to tell governments that AI is not bad. Like, I don't think we need to see AI as a bad thing. As Madhura said, people are trying to gauge AI and its possibilities. And obviously, let's be honest, a lot of people, including us, are using AI nowadays, right? A lot of us are using AI. So we're not saying that AI is bad. We are just saying that the deployment of AI can be harmful in our context, because government are deploying AI without making it human-centered and without making sure that it's respecting human rights. That's the reason why in our report, we have, as Juanita said, put in page 22 and 23, our framework, the human rights focused policy impact assessment. And I really like the 7 principles also presented by Arzak. I think this human rights focused policy impact assessment, together with the 7 principles presented by Arzak, could be a good framework for civil society, us to use when we are advocating for AI framework and AI laws that actually respects human rights. And the reason why we are really doing this report, and the reason why we also reach out to Trustlaw to have pro bono support in terms of analyzing Thailand AI landscape with other countries to better understand, it's because Thailand clearly has a key role to play in the region. They want to become leaders in the digital transformation landscape, so we need to do it right. Thailand stands at the crossroad. We will let AI become are we going to let AI become a tool for economic exploitation and control, or are we going to harness its potential to empower and uplift all members of society? So it's really coming back to Madhura's question. Our goal is to empower and uplift AI for all members of society. And so the decision that we're making now, we really determine whether AI serves the interests of the people or those in power. So it's really time to act boldly and ensure that human rights are at the heart of Thailand's AI future, because we will have an impact in the region. And it starts with us. And I think it's really important for all of us, civil society from the Global South, to come together and look at the countries in the region that are taking the lead, but they're not doing it well. They are taking the lead in a very authoritarian way. They are not reforming laws like the CCA in Thailand, the Computer Crime Act, the Cybersecurity Act, the PDPA. They're not reforming laws, and because those laws are flawed, when they're being used together with AI, it turns out as becoming surveillance and control over our free speech. So the time is now. It's for us to act now, and the time is with us, and the power is with us to really turn the discussion in our favor and making sure that AI is serving the people. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Before we wrap up, does anyone else want to add any closing comments?
Emily said for seconding
I don't think we have any
then
more questions from the
adding
audience.
one more
So,
aspect
anyone
of
else?
the role of
No?
civil society organizations, according to me, is also doing the building of awareness piece. So in India, we have a number of civil society organizations that are continuously building awareness on issues related to data protection, related to the use of AI, whether it is through social media, whether it is through campaigns, and that is also a very important part in getting public interest into the issues. So it's not just dependent on the civil society organizations to do the advocacy, but also to build that awareness, which is also one of the components of the aspect of looking at whether there is a human rights focused policy impact assessment aspect to any kind of policy. So I would definitely say one more thing I'd add to the role of civil society in this is to build awareness on issues and garner larger support that supports the policy advocacy they will be doing.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, just one last thing about the civil society. This is a last edition of the civil society recommendations on the report. I inserted it just before we published it. I asked Emily about this, and civil society participation in any tech governance should be approached with caution, especially when it involves partnership with technology companies. The collaboration appears to be very practical, but it's a practical way to pull expertise and resources, and often becomes a mechanism for tech corporations to whitewash their policies and practices. Companies frequently co-opt civil society organization as a veneer of accountability, leveraging their credibility to legitimize exploitative system. Big tech companies would bring small CSOs in the region and say that, hey, we are doing well because these CSOs are working with us. And this dynamic risks turning CSOs into unwitting accomplices in ethics washing, where the appearance of collaboration masks the actual absence of real change. And I think civil society must maintain a very, very critical distance and avoid being drawn into partnership that dilute their autonomy or compromise their missions. Because engaging with tech companies, this must be predicated on clear terms that prioritize the protection of the public interest, the protection of the rights of the marginalized groups, because any collaborations must involve strict transparency requirements where the goals and processes and outcomes are openly shared with the public. Having Google talk about digital dictatorship in Asia and funding
Okay, Jean, thank you for your efforts
Yeah,
there.
thank you so much, Jean. Tommy, can I just add a little bit on top to what Jean said? Because I think people in the audience might not have heard Jean very well, but I really second what Jean was saying is that civil society participation, especially marginalized communities participation, is key when developing AI policies and AI specific legislation. But the civil society participation cannot be co-opted. And what we're experiencing now, especially in our region, is the co-optation of civil society groups that are working on digital rights by tech companies, by Meta, by Google and others, engaging in stakeholders engagement, or meaningful stakeholders engagement that is not meaningful. And really then ticking the box saying, oh, but we engage with key experts in the field. They agree with us. Most of the time we're inviting and we listen to a very short presentation that really doesn't give any input into the real human rights assessment. And so there's this feeling of, being the eyes for tech companies. There is the feeling of praising some civil society actors on digital rights to be they're the eyes of tech companies. And then it's making it difficult for those civil society actors, to actually push back on tech companies when it comes to AI and human rights, or the way that AI tools are being deployed in the global south in a very colonized way, without taking into account our legal loopholes and the lack of human rights protection in our countries. So I just wanted to add that to what Jean was saying, is really being careful of the co-optation of civil society by tech companies. Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Tommy.
I think Tommy's struggling with tech a little bit in terms of sound not reaching him and him not being able to unmute and speak.
Yeah, we are very sorry to the people joining us. It's been a little struggle to have the event on LinkedIn Live. We are experiencing some tech issues that we did not experience when we tested. But thank you so much, everyone, truly, for joining us. We hope that we answered everyone's question. So maybe we give the floor to any of the speaker to really give us like what's the most important that you want the people to leave with from today's discussion. So who wants to start?
Okay, I'll go in and then
Okay.
uh, I think it's critical that we build the capacity within civil society. I think there was a question from Adisha that you answered. I think she nailed it. I think with the growing influence of AI, especially acting as a new colonial power in global south, I think it's really important to enhance its understanding and strengthen advocacy to ensure AI is developed ethically and equitably. And particularly, people from the global south are given opportunities to understand and share and address the technological dominance from the global north that is being bombarded over global south. And unless we don't address the issue in the next couple of years, I think this new colonial power would create havoc, especially on the human rights framework and all the achievements that we have done so far, from creating a framework to support human rights before the digital age to the new digital age. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to go next? I'm back, by the way, I believe. I just had some technical issues. Sorry about that. Anyone else want to give some final comments?
Maybe Joanita, and then myself, and then Jean. Yes? Great.
Joanita, Emily, and Jean. Let's go
Great.
with that. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So yeah, I think one of the things that I really liked what Emily said, apart from everything else that we've heard today, is the fact that we shouldn't be afraid of AI. It's a tool to be used. It's not something that we're meant to be afraid of. And the other part I think that we need to take back is that the response to AI through legal frameworks is going to have to be something that is more live and dynamic. It's going to need constant updation because the technology is going to evolve. And so I think the best solution at this point of time, if you're a layperson listening to this, is one, to be aware, to keep yourself apprised, to ask questions and not be afraid of asking those questions. And if you're a civil society actor, I think it's more to start coming together, joining forces, and bringing out the conversation for pro-human rights based policy in relation to AI. So let's not be afraid, but let's actually collaborate and use our powers for the best interest of the use of technology and civil society. So I would end with that.
Emilie, you want to go next?
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm not sure whether we will be able to hear Jean because of her mic issue. So Jean, if you could maybe leave a comment for people. So for me, really, what everybody said, I really agree with everyone, and I think that having this discussion now is very important because now more than ever people are talking about AI and more people are using AI. So really, I want people to live with AI is not bad. AI can be used as a tool for good if only it respects human rights and only if put people over profit. The role of marginalized communities is key. We need to involve and ensure that they participate, build capacity of civil society, build capacity of marginalized communities. Obviously, it's very difficult for civil society to do it on its own, so we need to collaborate, all come together, especially from the global south. We cannot have AI being colonized by global north tech companies and then being imposed on us without proper legal framework. It's really important for all of us really to collaborate and work together, involve marginalized communities and really raise awareness. So what I really hope is that once the report is launched, I hope once people have the time to read our report, we can have another discussion live online, maybe not on LinkedIn Live because it's been difficult, but maybe on YouTube or another online platform, where we can discuss the report with other people as well because they would have read the report. And also want to tell people to keep their eyes open because the Center for AI and Human Rights led by Arzak is going to do more and more work on AI and human rights. And with Manushya, I really hope to be collaborating together. I'm also very grateful to Trustlaw and Joanita, for being on this journey with us for the past 3 years. People don't realize that it's been a journey, developing this report. It has taken 3 years. We started when AI was, a new topic, and we are launching it when AI is because it's the hot topic and everybody is already using AI. So very thank you so much, Trustlaw, for your collaboration, for trusting in us, and thank you so much, Jean, for the amazing report, for your passion, for your expertise. It's so good to have an expert like you and like Arzak from the Global South leading the discussion on AI and human rights, and really people keep your eyes open. We're also going to RightsCon in 2025, where we'll have a session on decolonizing digital rights, where we will also be talking about AI and the way it's being colonized. And thank you so much, Tommy, for hosting us as well, for moderating our discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Emilie. Thanks for inviting me to moderate everything. Thanks for everyone for watching and listening. Apologies for any technical issues, but we got there in the end. I know the author of today's report, Jean, she had some mic issues, but she says thank you for everyone for listening. And also to Emilie, Arzak, and Joanita, great insights, really interesting stuff. Once again, thanks to the audience. Balancing progress and human rights. Is Thailand ready for artificial intelligence that respects human rights? The report has been launched today by Manushya Foundation. And thanks for joining, and stay tuned for more events that Manushya, I'm sure, will be putting on in the future about human rights and digital rights, etc. And we've already been asked from an audience member to host another discussion. So we'll hopefully see you soon. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Thank everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.